Good day, students. We shall be continuing on our venture. IQ is equal to UQ. The question for today will be rheumatic heart disease. And as and when I describe, you people shall be discovering the number of minuscules in it, which can be asked as a viva or a short note question. As is your pathology, so is your medicine. Brilliant words of Sir William Osler. These have been passed on to me by my professor of medicine, and I shall be failing in my duty if I do not traverse it on to my students. Rheumatic heart disease itself. It will be always better for us to understand the divisions of a particular topic. There is a condition called rheumatic fever and another called as chronic rheumatic heart disease. Rheumatic fever itself is caused by Lancefields group A streptococcus, which presents as pharyngitis. Repeated bouts of these are required for the development of a rheumatic fever. Generally, the interval between the pharyngitis and the cardiac manifestation is about 3 to 4 weeks. The age is commonly 5 to 15 years. It is a disease of children, 5 to 15 years, and females are slightly more prone than males. Though there are a number of lesions which can be caused, we are worried about the deformity of the valves. Again, the words of Sir William Osler. It licks the joints but bites the heart. In rheumatic heart disease, there is something called as pancarditis. Pan means all, and carditis means the layers and the inflammation. So you have got the endocardium, myocardium, and the pericardium which are affected, hence the name pancarditis. Then there are the valvular lesions, which of course fit into the endocardium itself. Regarding the pericardium, there is something called as the bread and butter pericarditis, which we shall be seeing. The fundamental sequence of events or the pathogenesis. It is caused by group A beta hemolytic streptococcus, which results in a pharyngitis, and after about 3 weeks of postpharyngeal infection, there is the production of the anti-streptococcal antigen antibody. This antibody reacts with not only the organism but also cross-reacts with the connective tissues of the heart and blood vessels. Basically, it is an antigen-antibody reaction resulting in a damage to the cardiac tissue. A schematic representation of this. A group A streptococcus which occurs in chains causing a pharyngitis results in the activation of the T cells. The T cells in turn lead to the attraction of the B cells which produce anti-streptococcal antibodies. Streptococcus is the antigen and anti-streptococcal is the antibody. And it continues. There is a cross reaction between the killing of the organism and the glycolipids of the heart. So you find that various tissues can be damaged. This is a valve leaflet which undergoes an inflammation, leading to the formation of a vegetation. Also, there is a pancarditis. The endocardium, myocardium, as well as the pericardium are affected, in which we can see the Aschoff nodule. So now you can see both side by side and follow the sequence of events. It is a disease more common in the underdeveloped countries where overcrowding predisposes and malnutrition paves the pathway. It is almost eradicated in developed countries such as the United States and United Kingdom. The clinical criteria will be of paramount importance to us. I would like the students to kindly follow this until they finish their medicine or even further. There are various modified criteria, but we shall stick to the basics. Jones, remember the mnemonic Jones. The heart has been denoted as a symbol, and this is O. So you have got the joints, hearts, nodules, skin erythema, S for Sydenham's chorea. So these form the major criteria, and the minor criteria will be peace. So you have got a previous history of rheumatic fever, ECG with a PR prolongation, A for arthralgia, C for C-reactive protein, and ESR. And there is an elevated temperature. When a patient has got two major criteria or one major and two minor criteria, it is diagnostic of rheumatic heart disease. The Jones criteria. Though it is a clinical question, it also can be asked in pathology, and if at all you do answer this, you score a point over others. The manifestations can be divided into two: the cardiac manifestations and the extracardiac manifestations. In the heart, you find that it is basically the valvular component of the endocardium. Endocardium is nothing but a lining. It lines the entire heart, the valve leaflet, and when this is involved, particularly the affecting the valve, it is of great importance, in which we can see beaded vegetations, depositions of fibrin and areas of necrosis. Beaded vegetations, 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter. They are found along the lines of closure of the valve leaflets. Firm and adherent. Beyond this, there can be the fusion of the cusps leading to a stenosis. The words may be very difficult. See what I had mentioned. Before I go to the next slide, I would like you people to kindly note these down: the McCallum's plaque, Aschoff nodule, valvular lesion, and pancarditis. These will be of significance to a student of pathology. Aschoff nodule. This has been a question that has been asked to the students for almost a century, and it will remain there for the next 200 years. Aschoff nodule is a university question, and it shows an area of fibrinoid necrosis. Fibrinoid necrosis you get in any immunological disorder, vasculitis, etc. Here also you see. It is surrounded by lymphocytes and macrophages. There are some plump histiocytes. Plump histiocytes which are called either the Anischkow cells or the Aschoff cells. Anischkow cells or the Aschoff cells. They have got abundant amphophilic cytoplasm, and they have got a nucleus with an owl-eyed appearance. I will be showing you the pictures in the next slide. So chromatin is dispersed like caterpillar. And in addition to all these, there can be the Anishko giant cells. Anishko cell is different, Anishko giant cell is different. And these may develop and remain for several years. When we do an autopsy at a much later date, you can still find this Aschoff nodules. This is a classical picture. A little picture is worth a million words from illustrated pathology. An ovoid nodule. Look at the shape of it. It is not round. It is an ovoid nodule with histiocytes. And they have got the chromatin over here. Area of fibrinoid necrosis surrounded by a few lymphocytes. Look at these dark cells. They are the lymphocytes. Fibrinoid necrosis, histiocytes, and lymphocytes. This is a histological picture of it. Again, you find the ovoid lesion. These are the normal myocardial fibers, and this will be showing the cells that we had seen earlier. The other lesions that we should remember will be the vegetations. Look at this minute beaded vegetations. They are found along the lines of closure of the valve leaflets. They are firmly adherent to the walls. In fact, when students handle it, they can pass it from one to another without the damage of these vegetations. McCallum's plaque is an area of thickening in the posterior wall of the left atrium. In the posterior wall of the left atrium. And this is the cardiac valve in which there is a vegetation. Fibrin and other things. I'll be talking to you in detail about vegetations at a later class and the inflammation. Apart from this, there are some structures called atrial appendages in which we can find the Aschoff body. Pancarditis, wherein we can find the Aschoff body. For your eyes only, no? So, it's supposed to be a famous movie. And then in this, I am finding there are multiple vegetations that are there along the lines of closure. They have deformed the valve, but the surface remains. It has become opaque. It is no longer transparent. Again, a picture of it. The Aschoff cell or the Anishkov cell, it has got a caterpillar-like chromatin. Look at this one, a caterpillar over here that is drawn. This is an actual photograph, and this is a mnemonic that I had shown you people. Also, when you cut across, you find that there will be a central pale nucleus. That is what is seen here, and there is a chromatin. So this gives rise to an owl-eyed appearance. An owl-eyed appearance, which is classical. So questions will be asked like this. Caterpillar cells are seen in. Owl-eyed appearance is classical of. Jones criteria, what are all the features? As I always remember, no, the greatest fool can ask more questions than the wisest man can answer. So we are all fools, will be asking questions. A picture of the heart again showing beaded vegetations. And if you observe carefully, they extend on to the papillary muscles. The papillary muscles also. And later on, when there is a lot of fibrosis and all, shortening can be there, leading to a deformity. So beaded vegetations. And chronic rheumatic heart diseases, repeated bouts of these, rheumatic fever, etc., will lead to chronic lesions which are permanent. So there are recurrent attacks. It manifests after several years. Need not be in the first 1 or 2 years. And there are fibrous strands which are bridging across the cusps, valvular cusps. So they lead to adhesion of the valvular cusps. And there is a valvular deformity which leads to a fish mouth or a buttonhole stenosis. Again, questions. Or if you do write on your own, you score a mark. There is a shortening of the caudate tendon. The importance of valvular lesions, medicine will teach you better. But then mitral stenosis can lead to dilatation of the left atrium, which can go on to the right ventricle. There can be a right ventricular distension. See what is over here, a typical fish mouth appearance. So there has been opacity. By seeing itself, you can appreciate the thickening of the valve leaflet. And somebody has made an impression of an eye over here. And look at the picture for comparison. So you got the eyes, but look at the mouth as such. So this is a typical appearance that you see, a fish mouth appearance. Another way of describing will be a buttonhole. Your button, it passes through a strand, and this is the appearance. So it is described as a buttonhole appearance or a fish mouth appearance. Until now, we had seen the cardiac manifestations. When I say extracardiac joints, there will be some kind of an effusion and migrating pain, but no residual lesion. That is why it is said earlier, it licks the joints but bites the heart. In the skin, you find that there can be the subcutaneous nodules, one of the major Jones criteria. That is why I have underlined and I have kept it in bold. Subcutaneous nodules. It can be seen in the occiput or in the extensor aspects of the joints. Erythema marginatum is, again, the word erythema means redness. Marginatum means margin. It is a skin lesion which has got a bathing suit-like distribution. The other things are seen in all immunological disorders, arthritis and pneumonitis that can. But these two you people should mention. Subcutaneous nodules, erythema marginatum. This is what we are seeing. So these are the subcutaneous nodules, discrete, the extensor aspect of the elbow, here is the ankle, or they may be seen in the occiput also. And erythema, the entire thing is a lesion, and you find that there is a margin showing a pink and raised border, which we call as erythema marginatum. It has got a bathing suit-like distribution. Another classical thing which we should remember, nowadays we don't see, but we had seen cases of this. Choreography, all of you know. It is a meaningful dance, but here it is purposeless. Purposeless jerky movements will be there. It is asymmetrical and it is of sudden onset. Occurs in childhood, in the adolescence, and it is due to a defect in the basal ganglia. Defect in the basal ganglia, that is this. Sometimes the child can harm itself and therefore there will be some iron railings that prevents the child from falling off the cot. The laboratory diagnosis, remember a few things alone. It is a streptococcal infection, therefore anti-streptolysin O. The titers are elevated in 80% of the cases. Anti-streptolysin O. Blood will be showing leukocytosis, and there can be inflammatory markers like ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, and the C-reactive protein. These can sometimes be taken as the minor criteria. Something that is of importance, maybe I had missed it. Anyway, here you find the pericardium. It is showing a shaggy appearance because of fibrin-like material, fibrinous strands. Now what happens is, when you smear butter onto a slice of bread and you affix another slice, pull the slices apart, you will be finding strands of material. Similarly here, when you pull the parietal and the visceral pericardium, you can see fibrinous strands, and hence the name bread and butter pericarditis. The complications of rheumatic fever. Rheumatic fever persistent leads to a rheumatic heart disease, which can result in a valvular deformity. There can be stenosis, incompetence, or both. Mitral valve, aortic valve are commonly involved. Sometimes they can be combined, then the tricuspid and the pulmonary valves. There is a fibrinous pericarditis we had seen. Myocarditis can lead to damage of the conduction system. It can result in arrhythmias. The ECG shows prolonged PR interval, another diagnostic criteria. And whatever be it, the valvular disease can lead to a cardiac decompensation and even a cardiac failure. Infective endocarditis, one of the predisposing conditions for infective endocarditis is rheumatic heart disease. So this can predispose to infective endocarditis as well. Please do remember these complications. So I hope this will stay in your mind, and so also these. The etiopathogenesis, the Jones criteria, rheumatic fever, the acute as well as the chronic rheumatic heart disease. What are the extra cardiac manifestations, laboratory diagnosis, and complications? Always think of the subheadings. The subheadings will take you to the answer. Efkaristo Pole. You people are supposed to tell me the meaning of this word. Thank you.